Got a Match. What's the story of that song?
The story with that song, that was obviously from the very first record, the very beginning. Yeah. At that point, we were excited about everything. I mean, John and I were kids, man. I mean, we were just like, you know. I remember one thing about the band. We had just played the Queen Mary Jazz Festival. Miles was on it, you know, different bands, and it was kind of one of our big debuts as a trio, as the Electric Band. And we played the gig, and Bernie Kirsch, our sound engineer, would record everything from the board. Bernie, give me the cassettes. We're going to go to the car and check it out, you know, after the show. So he gives us the cassette. I'm with John. John, come on, man, let's go listen to this. I got my car here, you know. So we get in there in my little Honda Civic wagon and put it in the Alpine player, you know. And we're listening, you know. And I'm like, dude, why does it sound like Chick is burning and we're dragging? You know. He goes, yeah, I know, man. He's like on fire, and we're like, you know. And so we came to the realization, because, you know, both John and I, most recently when we got into the band, had both come out of R&B situations. I think John was playing with Larry Carlton and whomever, and he was doing a lot of electric, you know, pocket music. I had just come out of doing a lot of gigs with Richard T. and Cornell Dupree and Sanborn on occasion. You know, Who It Is was the name of that band. And Will Lee. Will Lee was playing bass. So I was concentrating more on the, you know, the trying to lay back and play more pocket oriented. So we got on the band, and some of the music John and I we'd be in it for the mentality of like a rhythm section to hold the time down, you know. And we realized really quickly we couldn't do that, because the result was, as I said, Chick was burning and we were dragging. It just wasn't happening at all. So we made a decision at that point to, as Mike Stern likes to say, get up off of it and play a little bit more on top than maybe we wanted to. But if we didn't, it just didn't work, you know. And that's one of the things that I also love about and learned from, you know, Maestro Gad is that he can adapt to anything. You know, you'd hear him with Ricky Lee Jones or you know, Paul Simon or what have you, you know, just, you know, laid back, funky, beautiful pocket, right, groove. And then you'd hear him with Michelle or Chick or whoever it was, and it was like pushing forward, you know. It was still in time, of course, but it had an edge. That's what's called adaptation. And you know, to not rush or drag, but to play with, at the same time you're doing the same job-oriented aspect of what we do, which is keep time. But it's the feel. It's so difficult. So I remember I used to get blasted quite a lot back in the day for my feel being on top, right? And what most people don't know about the story is this aspect, that if we didn't play on top, you know, and sometimes Chick would ask us to as well, you know, it just didn't work musically for him. And the one thing that I always tell my students is, make the person happy who's paying your salary. Whoever writes the check, that's who you make happy. Nobody else matters. You got to, like, everybody falls in line with who's ever paying a check, you know. Yeah. It's like, and then you make it work. You figure it out how to make it musically enjoyable, musically, you know, satisfying. And so that was sort of our existence in the Electric Band, is that we, you know, except for the Light Years record and maybe a couple of other tunes, we did have to play quite a bit more on top than we would have maybe preferred at times.
It's crazy to think about you guys dragging, because of course the Electric Band that I have seen was once you guys dialed it in, and it was so unbelievably incredible. You and Patitucci together are so locked. Like, you guys are one of the greatest rhythm sections ever.
Right. Well, let me clarify. I did say that it sounded like we were dragging. I should have said that it sounded like we were just, you know, too far in the backside of the pocket, because
Right,
it's not
right.
like we were slowing. It's not like we were slowing
Yeah.
down, for God's sakes. We couldn't do
Right.
that with Chick. Forget about it.
No way.
But there, it is something to learn from, to pay attention to. That and of course you could do metronomic study to hopefully better your inner clock and all that type of thing. But there is the whole essence of some people are out there professing you don't need a metronome, don't practice with a metronome, which is nuts to me. Just for the fact of that, if you only approach time from your human aspect all of the time, some of us get into habitual things either from physical motion or just where they want the tempo to be. That's comfortable. And sometimes tempo where maybe somebody else wants it is not comfortable. It's not where you want to be. So I still profess that that practicing, learning about playing time with a metronome, and while we're talking about it, a good feeling metronome, which is why my buddy Jay's app called Groove Clicks is like what I use, because it's a good feeling metronome with grooves and pocket stuff. That whole thing of like time and developing inner clock, and then it still comes down to the feel of it. And there you can write books on this stuff, and some do, and but it's the feel, and it's the feel that is agreed upon with whomever you're playing with at the time.
Yeah.
So it's a very, very difficult subject to talk about, or certainly to teach. Really hard, because a lot of it comes down to the moment of an agreed upon expression.